Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Oxwide. It's a lovely sunny day in May. It's not, it's pouring down with rain outside, and I see we've had one of the wettest Mays on record. I'm very glad that it wasn't the same this time last year when we were in lockdown, and that sunshine certainly made it a bit more bearable. Well, welcome to Oxford. We've got a couple of very interesting discussions coming up today. I'll be talking to the members of the Shadow Executive who have been working with us since the start of the year to change the way that we lead and run the Trust. I'll also be talking to a number of colleagues about a safe space initiative that we've started, and also to Tobias about the LGBTQ plus group at Oxleas and some of the work he's been doing and our plans for that group over the future. But first, I wanted to give you a couple of pieces of Trust news. First place, this week we hit 80% of frontline staff vaccinated. That is great news. Thank you to everyone who's had their vaccinations. I've had both mine now, and it certainly does give you a bit more confidence as you go about your business. We've seen in the news this week the news about the B1617 variant that is appearing in parts of the country. We've seen increases in parts of London, in Bolton and other places. And at the minute we know Public Health England is doing what it can to contain the spread. So far what we've heard is that the vaccines seem to offer protection against it. There seems to be some confidence that the vaccines offer protection, and that while the variant may be slightly more likely to transmit than existing variants, it seems to have dropped from 50% down to 10% plus or so on. So I think what I'd say, as I've said before, is the case numbers will increase because it's a contagious infectious disease and we're moving about more, so the numbers will go out. The important thing is how many people end up in hospital and getting ill from it. And we'll have to see now whether the vaccines offer that protection, we hope. So, but what I would say is, I know it can be an anxious time for us seeing all this stuff on the news, and it's rolling news, and you can spend all day looking at the latest takes on it on social media. What I'd say is, don't worry about this. It's to be expected when you open up society and allow people to move around again. We've got to have some confidence in the vaccination process. For now, you need to make sure that we follow the sensible PPE goals and the guidance that we've got in place around our clinical settings and in our office spaces. And do remember that we're still supposed to be working from home wherever possible. And that guidance is in place through till the 21st of June. And there's going to be a review of that next stage of unlocking in a couple of weeks' time. I've also been asked to remind you as well, and I picked up another box yesterday of the lateral flow kits as well to keep testing yourself. Because, I don't know, my nostrils are much more robust than they were at the start of all this as well. So I've got very much into the habit of doing it. It takes you 30 seconds or so to do the test. Then half an hour later, you get a good result, which tells you with some confidence whether you're presenting as infectious at that point or not. So do keep doing your LFD tests. If you need more kits, please get them. It does really help us understand where there's a risk of infection and to control it in the community as well. And actually, I think now that we're opening things up more and we've got this concern about these new variants, doing the LFD tests is more important than it ever was. So please do make sure you take the time to get a box of them, keep them at home. I'm going to see my parents tomorrow for the first time since September, which I'm really excited about. Actually, it's going to be lovely. I was supposed to be going camping, and I'm delighted to have a good excuse not to do that, actually, what with the weather. But actually, while it's not an absolute guarantee, to know that before I go and see my mum and dad that I'll have done a test tonight, and I'll probably do one in the morning just so I can say to them, look, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not symptomatic. And the test's telling us nothing. Let's take a sensible approach to this, folks. So post-COVID, we're also looking about agile working. Do keep an eye on the Ox and through your team meetings, because what we are having a look at is how we use our office spaces, how we use our workspaces to take advantage of the way in which we've used digital during COVID. And you'll see through the interviews today the range of different settings from which people are joining this conversation today. And it's the kind of thing we couldn't possibly have done, or we wouldn't have done 18 months ago because we weren't in the habit to it. So we need to pick up on some of these habits and what it's enabled us to do. But we also need to recognise that it's good to be around people, actually. And we need to recognise that we might need to do more of a sort of mixed media of where you work and when, and support people with guidance around that. I'm in the process of clearing out my office and putting my personal effects into a box, because within the exec team at Pinewood, we're going to be moving towards more of an open plan way of working. And so rather than me having an allocated office, whenever I come into Pinewood or one of our other sites, I'm going to book somewhere to work and bring my laptop. And I think we just all need to get relaxed across the organisation, that for some of us, actually, I don't need an office 5 days a week anymore. I need somewhere I can go 2 or 3 days a week to work with colleagues and to meet colleagues. But, there's no sense us as an organisation paying for a lot of fixed assets when actually, we need to invest money in our staff and making sure that you've got the right support and the right facilities around the organisation. So keep your eye out, and if you're asked to take part in a discussion around agile working and help us shape our understanding of that, do let us know. Okay, so I think that's all the main points of trust news I wanted to get across this week. Other than, I will just mention that you will be aware that we had a CQC re-inspection of our older adult services, and there's a draft report back, and there's some really good positive news in there. So if you are in older adults, you know, you've done some smashing work, folks. The report's draft at the minute though, but we will see a good result from that in short order, and we'll communicate that when we're allowed to. Anyway, next up, the shadow executive. So one of the things that we started over the course of this pandemic year as part of our work around building a fairer Oxleas is looking at how we bring some different voices into the leadership space within the trust. Because if I'm quite honest, in the exec team, there's a lot of people who've been in the NHS for a couple of decades. We've all reached a certain point in our career, and when we get presented with a problem, because we all know each other pretty well and we've been doing this for a long time, you can kind of tell how we're all going to respond to it. You know, I know what angles people will come at it from, and we all, because of our experience, approach things in a certain way. And what we wanted to do was open up to a different group of voices in leadership. And I'm delighted to be joined today by a couple of members of our shadow exec. We've got ROSHNI and Taf and Kelly with us today. And they've all been working with us since the start of the year. And the shadow exec get full access to the exec papers at the same time as the executive team. We take part in a full discussion around them, they as a group, and then with me, with one of the shadow exec chairing. And their views are really helping us on the exec team shape the way that we think and develop as an organisation. And I'm really pleased to be joined by them today. And first off, I'll start by going to ROSHNI. And ROSHNI, do you want to tell us a bit about your experiences as the shadow exec so far, why you put yourself forward and how you found it?
Just joined the trust during the pandemic, so I was only really exposed to my team. As a speech and language therapist, I have a very clinical role, so I wasn't really aware of what goes on in the wider trust. And through the shadow executive, I have had the opportunity to, you know, network, get to know other people, get to know the wider trust, and it's been a really lovely experience. And I've been on a really nice journey. It's been lovely, like understanding how the trust works. I feel like I've deepened my understanding, and the best part is I've made so many new colleagues, new friends, which has been really, really great. And I don't know if Taf and Kelly want to add anything else.
Yeah, let's go to Taf. Are you up on Sheppy today there, Taf?
No, yes, I am. I'm in the car park today.
Good man, good man. So tell us about your experience as the shadow exec then.
To be honest with you, it's been amazing. I've enjoyed working with the board itself. So learning from you, Matthew, in terms of how to chair meetings, and also learning more about the finances, how things run within the trust, learning about new policies, how they're actually implemented. It's been absolutely amazing. And I think I think we appreciate how.
What I'll do is I'll come back.
It's been absolutely amazing.
Thanks, Taff. You were breaking up a bit there, and I think we've all had plenty of experience of that this year. But we're taking a lot of positives. No, it's not you. It's good old teams, isn't it? And Taff, one of the things I suppose that's been good for us is to hear the range of different voices from people involved in frontline and clinical roles. You know, there's been a couple of papers where I think you and your colleagues have reacted differently to some of the problems that we've been posed. You know, thinking about the recent discussions around restraint and so on.
Absolutely, and I think it's been really interesting to talk about those topics, especially when you're looking at restraints and also looking at it within the culture, within the wards, especially when you look at how service users from a BAME background are being
I think we'll go across to Kelly, I think, and see if we can come back.
It's really been good.
Cheers, Taff. All right, Kelly, am I coming through okay with you?
Yes, I can hear you. Thanks, Matthew.
I can see the rain battering down outside, so it must be affecting our signals here. So, Kelly, you've been part of this as well. I mean, it's been a really interesting, as ROSHNI said, a bit of a journey for us in terms of bringing these different voices to the fore. How have you found it?
It's been amazing. I was so thrilled to be offered an invitation to sit on the shadow executive as a former service user of Oxleas services myself, to now be working for Oxleas and to also be offered a place on the shadow exec really made me feel like my views would be taken seriously. And that was one of my main reasons for wanting to join the shadow exec, actually, was to provide a voice for Oxleas patients and service users at the highest level within the trust. But I've been really inspired by how caring and passionately my views have been received by staff at a very high level within the trust. I have a real curiosity about how things work and why they do work the way they work. So this has just been amazing for me to fill in all the blanks about how things happen in the organisation, and all the information that's made at a high level trickles down through the trust.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been a really interesting discussion for all of us as well, is about how we try to get the communications right through the organisation. I know we're doing a bit of piece of work with you on that, but it's been interesting for us to hear you hearing stuff from the exec directly and then reflecting on how it doesn't sometimes get right through to staff who are working on the clinical front line or operationally out in the field. And I think that's helping us shape the way we use tools like the intranet and team briefings and so on. The other thing that I've been really pleased at as well is, you know, we've not withheld any papers. So the shadow exec has had full access to absolutely everything the exec's seen, including some really some confidential stuff that we've had to then announce a bit later. And what I like is the sense of trust there is within the group as well. And I think that's really come through very strongly, that we trust you, you trust us. And I think, you know, in terms of developing future leaders and transparency within the organisation, it's got to be what we aspire to. So we've had a couple of sessions as well on, you know, how finances work, how capital works. I think I'm doing one on you soon about how ICSs and systems work. I mean, Roshni, how are you finding this? Is it changing the way you think about your future career potentially, or influencing that?
Definitely. I mean, when you join the NHS, you know, you're so involved in your role that you don't really realize you're a part of such a big trust. My team exists, and we've got 50 to 60 speech and language therapists, but Oxleas, you've got 5,000 people working all together. So it's been such a nice experience to see, you know, what the exec goes through, the decisions they have to make. And it's definitely helped me, you know, have a think about what I'd like to do in the future of my career, and, you know, what the steps I might take to like build up to a higher band, a managerial position. So definitely found that the skills are so valuable, and I'm so grateful that we do have these sessions every month or so, where we're able to network, connect with other members of the exec, learn so much about finances, budgeting, estate, things I had never really considered as part of my job role because it's so clinical. But I'm really grateful that we have that kind of exposure. Whether you'd like to take it further or not, it's just good to have that awareness of the trust that we work in.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I always remember going for jobs earlier on in my career, and it always said, have you got budget experience? And you said no, and they say, well, you can't apply for the job. And I say, well, how am I going to get budgetary experience if no one ever gives me a job involved in it? And I think, you know, if we can just open up these, I mean, for me, the great thing will be that when we get members of the shadow exec becoming members of a full exec, whether in this trust or another in years to come, and I'm sure that is something we will see. So look, thanks very much to Taf, to Roshni and to Kelly and to the rest of the members of the Shadow Exec. We will be changing the membership of the Shadow Exec every year, so do look for the opportunity to get involved yourself. And if you've got a Shadow Exec member working in your area, or you know one of the team, do have a chat with them about what we're doing. I've not come across another trust that's doing that, this certainly in London, and there's a lot of interest in how we're approaching this actually. So it's great from my perspective to see Oxleas in a bit of a trailblazer role, and every member of the exec and board that's met you as a group has just said that your energy and your drive and the connection it creates between board and services we deliver has just been fantastic. So thank you very much to everyone. And Taf, I'll see you at Swaleside. It's next week or week after, I think. So looking forward to catching up again. All right, folks.
Thank you.
Cheers all.
Bye.
Okay, honestly, a real, of the things that we've done at Oxleas over the last couple of years, I think it's one of the ones I'm proudest of actually, is bringing that great group of people together. And I think it's also interesting to recognise that you need the focus on us creating a better environment to encourage diversity within Oxleas is about so much more than just doing it because it's the right thing to do. It also improves our ability to function as an organisation, because when we open up routes for different voices to come to the fore, we learn things, we find challenges to our preconceptions, and it improves the way that we do our jobs. You know, so a brilliant group and a really fantastic piece of work there. So next up, I'm joined now by JAPLEEN, Juliana and CHARNJIT to talk about the Safe Space Initiative, Safe Space Support Group. So JAPLEEN, tell us a bit about this then, please.
Hi, thank you, Matthew. I think the idea to create a safe space was literally a conversation between Chan, Juliana and I. And we have realized that all of us have been looking at some very distressing images which are coming out from India, in particular from Delhi. And, you know, the idea is that there is strength in solidarity, that when you are sharing a terrible, terrible experience like people from the Indian subcontinent are, there is some strength in bringing people together and providing a safe space which is confidential and allows you to have these, you know, deep conversations which are affecting you currently. So we decided to put this together. We've done it very quickly, and today we held the first session. It was an hour long, and it was attended by people from the exec who gave a really warm, lovely welcome to the attendees, and we had 10 people attend today. It was a very emotional space as well, to be honest, because people are struggling and sometimes they're struggling alone. And it was very nice to be able to offer a space where people can come together and share this struggle together. Having had personal experience myself last year, I was able to share some resources about how to get back home if that's what you're wanting to do, about how to access local resources, and I'll be sharing that more widely. But I'm so pleased that we've been able to do this under the BAMEX umbrella, and you know, it's meant a lot to us.
And I'll come to Charn next, actually, then as well. So, Charn, tell us a bit about where the idea for this came from and the source of support that you've found in it so far.
Oh, hi, thank you for having us. So really, the idea just came from JAPLEEN. She and I were discussing this a few weeks ago. And I also remember JAPLEEN going through quite an emotional time around about this time last year, because her family's out in India and her dad wasn't very well. So she had such a struggle and a challenge to travel out to India. So we were discussing that, you know, there's obviously colleagues maybe going through this now. So it was really her idea, but I'm just here to support her. So just to support everybody that might need assistance, emotional support.
And in terms of people getting involved in this, how often are you intending to get the group together and create these opportunities?
So to start off, we're thinking, I mean, we just completed our first one, so it looks like everybody would want to maybe once a week. We're offering it in working hours, lunch hour, and possibly in the evenings, one day in the week, yeah.
And there's been something so important this year about finding the opportunity just to talk about what it's been like to go through this, because I think a lot of us are working in quite isolated environments. We're worried about things that are out of our control, and it's not so much that you maybe can do something about it, but you know, it's the old problem shared is a problem half thing, isn't it? And we want to encourage people to come forward and say if they're struggling with this. And you know, the news really has been profoundly distressing and continues to be, doesn't it, from India just now? Yeah. And Juliana, I know you've supported this from the perspective of the BAMEX group as well. I mean, we've got members of staff with families right across the world, haven't we? And you know, that sense of distance is such a difficult thing for us to deal with, when your reaction when you're in distress is to be near the people that you love. You know, you want to be in a room with them, giving them a hug. This has just been the cruelest 15 months or so, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And if you consider that some of us live next door to our family and can't hug them, so it's not those souls who've got people far away. But I think what the network wanted to do, as well as support two of our members who've got very big hearts, to try and create some space for other people, was to try and remind us all that we all have a responsibility to check in with people. You know, we're all seeing those images. We're all seeing those horrendous pictures of what's happening. Just check in with your colleagues. If you're a manager, just check in with your staff member and make sure that they're okay. And if they're not coping, this trust has done some really amazing things in supporting people up to now in terms of giving us greater flexibility of working at home. People have got much better work-life balances at the moment. You know, the idea that you now no longer have to drive 40 minutes to get home. You can just stop what you're doing and go down to the kitchen and cook dinner. It's a new thing for us. This is exciting. But this is about creating a space that's so safe for some people to look at the issues that's really important to them. And then when they're ready, they'll come and they'll ask the rest of us what it is that we can do, because we feel just as helpless as they do. But I mean, it's a little something, but it's, you know, it's a start. And I think it's the opportunity to give people to come together is a really good thing.
Yeah, and so JAPLEEN, if people want to become involved and sort of look for the safe space support, where can they find out more information?
So they can start by emailing Chan, and I know Steve's going to put the email address at the bottom of the session today. So if you are interested and you'd like to get involved, please email Chan. And a couple of things I think I wanted to mention as well, Matthew, if I can, is that thank you so much for not addressing it as the Indian variant, because we discussed this as part of the group today, that, you know, there feels like there is an anti-Indian sentiment that's brewing, and some people shared some examples of where it's already happening. So I think it's a really important message that you are, you know, promoting today, and I really appreciate that. We also had some therapists attend the sessions today, and they've kindly offered one-to-one support to anybody who's really struggling, has had a recent bereavement, or just would like some additional support. So that's been amazing to see this, you know, kind of encouragement and support pour in. And it's been really important for us. We're going to try and hold some sessions in the evening as well, so people who can't make it during work hours can come and attend, you know, during the evening.
Thanks, and I think that's an important point, JAPLEEN. You know, this is B1617. It's the April variant, whatever people want to call it. You know, but I don't want to hear people refer to it by any other name than that from now on. Let's be straight about this. And the fact is that people are experiencing discrimination as a result of that, and we saw, you know, Donald Trump talking about the Chinese. For all of you with family in India at the minute, you know, must be a tremendously difficult time. I think it'd be good if there's more that we as a trust can do. I know there's discussions happening across the NHS just now about what more support we can offer, both to colleagues here with family in India, but also to India itself in terms of the NHS. Then do keep us posted on that, because, you know, we're one family here in the Oxleas and within the service, and we need to make sure we look out for each other. All right, thanks very much to JAPLEEN and Charn there, and thanks for joining us today, and wishing you and your loved ones all the best. Okay, before our third and final interview today, I'm just going to show you a quick film which has been sent in by the Greenwich ICMP East team. I think Steve's going to run VT here. There we are. So every morning, the ICMP East team in Greenwich have been doing a Keep Fit class before work. And thank you to Mike Fitzgerald and the team for sending this in. Great effort going. If any other teams out there are doing something similar to get the day going, please do let us know. Steve's going to put an address up on the screen in a minute where you can send things in. But we do really need to make sure that we're keeping ourselves mobile at the minute. If any of you, like me, has spent 8 or 9 hours on Teams meetings sitting on a kitchen chair at an inappropriate table, you'll know how stiff and knotted we can get if we do this. So it's great to see the ICMP team getting up and mobile there, and anything more like that, we're looking forward to see it. I know we've also got the Charlton football event coming up as well next Friday, so do look out for more signs of Oxleas getting out and getting sporty in the coming days. Okay, I'm delighted to be joined now by Tobias and Charlie Henley-Castleden. And Tobias, now I was just asking you before we came on air, you've been the chair of our LGBTQ plus staff network, I think, since pretty much I joined Oxleas. Now it's getting on for 3 years.
Yeah.
Now, is that right? Yeah. And you're handing over the mantle shortly, is that right?
I am indeed. Yeah, it's been an amazing 3 years almost. And I was really happy to be re-elected for a second term, but due to some, a family bereavement, sadly I had to step down earlier this year to concentrate on my family and my own career in other ways as well. So it's been a joy and a pleasure, and I'm yet to really meet Laura to hand over. We've planned a meeting to do that, but yeah, it's been an amazing privilege, and I've had a real vantage point of privilege and an honour, really, to be able to chair such a diverse, colourful network and really be an envoy and spokesperson for equality within our trust.
And you know, I was looking at some photos recently of you and some of our colleagues at Pride a couple of years ago. You know, which seems a million miles away now that we could get out and do that kind of thing. But it was great as a trust to, you know, under your leadership. I remember you coming to me very early on saying, "Look, we need to get out there and be part of this." Well, you know, that kind of thing's just been wonderful for us, hasn't it?
Oh, it was probably one of the happiest days of my career when I was able to, with some seniors as well from the exec, with our HR director at the time and other senior leaders as well, and such a huge array of disciplines and our governors and everybody that joined us on that day. It was seriously memorable, and you know, proud to be part of the wider NHS at London Pride. It is it's a very special moment when you're able to be part of that. Yeah, for sure.
I'll come back to you in a bit, Charlie. Tobias and Charlie, we're this week we saw Monday, didn't we, the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia, and we're doing a lot about Oxleas being a great place to work. Can you say a bit more about why making sure that LGBTQ+ members of staff feel at home and welcome here is important for us?
Absolutely. I think it's very important for us to focus on every group of our staff networks combined together. We form this amazing community where people can come for support and help in times of need, and even just to celebrate ourselves, I suppose, in one way, and each other. International Day Against Transphobia, homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia, I can never get it right or wrong, is a day that occasionally gets a bit left behind. I think it's also focused on the big three, as it were, of the sexualities of the LGBT and T. I think we have to remember sometimes that there's also the plus and the Q at the end of that as well. We've recently kind of rebranded the network to include the Q to make it more inclusive. And I think, you know, there's so many other sexualities and gender identities and orientations that we need to remember and focus on. And through things like the Great Place to Work and Building a Fairer Oxleas, I think we're doing some amazing work to bring that together and give people the voices that they need, and then actually listening to those voices as well, rather than just giving them a seat at the table and giving them a chance to actually, you know, make the changes that need to be made within the trust.
And what we're asking here, it's a measure of, you know, it's a sort of sweet spot of curiosity, tolerance, mutual understanding and respect that we're talking about here. I mean, I remember Tobias us all getting together in Memorial in room 4 a couple of years ago, and, you know, working through the fact that there's still quite a lot of people who find it difficult to talk about some of these issues. They're worried they're going to put their foot in it. I remember you showing us a cracking film of some trans women being interviewed by people sort of saying, you know, do you like men or women? How should I refer? You know, all these kinds of things. And there's still a fear, isn't there, sometimes about us talking about some of these issues of gender and sexuality?
There really are. And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, we've come such a long way. And yes, we have come a long way as a society, but there are still pockets and, you know, of resistance there. And it's most people just want to be led a little bit. You know, you need to walk those journeys with some people and show them that diversity isn't scary. It isn't, you know, something to be feared in terms of homophobia. And that's where it comes from, mainly the fear of the unknown. And definitely. It's something that that I've had the privilege of being part of, helping to embed a annual LGBT awareness event, which we have now. We had a virtual one this year, but yeah, we've had a couple of really good events, and everybody that comes really wants to get behind equality and be a part of that. So yeah, you know, it's a great opportunity for people to be part of something special.
And you know, Charlie, we were talking there about the International Day thing, and you know, there's what we're talking about there. There's days where we celebrate, isn't there, the diversity, but there's also days where we take a stand and say, look, we don't want to tolerate homophobic, biphobic, transphobic behaviour as well. You know, that it's not just about saying we want to welcome this curiosity. It's also to recognise that those phobias are harmful and damaging and unfair to people. And, you know, so what can people do to find out a bit more about this and how they can be a good, you know, either an ally or someone who might fall within one of these groups but wants to find out a bit more about what they can do to support each other?
Join the network is my first answer to that. Have a look on the Ox for us. We've got our page updated with our new chair and everything on that with Laura. And Laura as well, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today, but has some wonderful ideas already that we've heard of how we're going to progress the network. And I'm really excited to see where we go with that. I think as well, people can just listen to each other and members of the network and join as an ally if you don't identify as LGBTQ+. You know, we need to take stances in the world. We need allies behind us to be able to fight homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, things like conversion therapy, all of those things. And we need to come together to do that. And if we don't have allies at the table with us, then we're not going to progress, because we're all just agreeing that we need to change something. But if no one else is there as well, those changes aren't going to happen. So I think it'd be really great if we could get a lot more allies as part of our network, as well as people who are, you know, feel comfortable coming out and being a full member.
And that's important, isn't it? And I think what's interesting for me is, you know, as a sort of crude generalisation, younger people who I know are much more comfortable talking about issues to do with gender and sexuality. Some older people, I think, are, you know, not necessarily from a position of phobia, but just a position of fear of putting their foot in it, are sometimes a bit quieter and a bit less willing to come forward. I think we've got a cracking network. And Tobias, I hope you're proud of what you've achieved over the last couple of years, because you've done a smashing job in raising the profile of it and bringing so many of us with you on that journey. And it's, you know, it's a impressive pair of shoes for Laura to fill, and I'm looking forward to catching up with her when she gets into post. But thank you very much to both of you for being here today. And just on behalf of the board of Oxleas and the exec team, I just want to say thanks to Tobias. And you know, he was one of the first people I met when I got here. He's a real star, both in terms of what he does clinically for us, but also is championing the network across the organisation. Well done, Tobias, and thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, and cheers, Charlie, for joining us today. And shortly as well, I mean, what's interesting, one of the themes running through today really is about thinking about the huge range and the variety of staff and voices that we've got within Oxleas, and what a wonderful place it is to work in that respect. Coming up soon at the start of June, it's going to be around a year since I wrote to you all, following the death of George Floyd in the States and the Black Lives Matter movement. And I said at that point that I wanted us to be judged as an organisation on what we did and not just what we said. And I think the second Monday in June, we're going to take an opportunity to gather a few of us together and reflect with you on what we've achieved in that 12 months, some of the things that we've still got to do, but also to mark some of those successes and some of the things that we've really been able to build in. And all this, of course, is about us as Oxleas being a great place to work, one that welcomes all of our staff and allows them to excel and meet their best potential within the organisation. So do make sure you join us then. In the meantime, don't forget those lateral flow tests. If you still haven't had your vaccine, please do have it. There's very good reasons every day we can see why you must do that. And thanks for joining us today. Great members of the Shadow Exec. Thank you just now to Tobias and to Charlie. And thank you very much to JAPLEEN, Charn and Juliana for joining us and sending again our love and our condolences to people who've got family in India and who are dealing with that really tough time just now. I wish all you the best. Have a great weekend and speak to you again soon.